All right. Hello there. My name is Siona Scoto. That's me. And I am the Outreach and Placement Specialist with the Office of Career Services here at Blue Ridge CTC, which means that I have the wonderful privilege of working with students right before you graduate to help you find employment. This is a service offered to students known as Career Connections or job placement. But before you graduate, you will see my name, maybe through a text message or an email, because after every level of credential, my office surveys students. In other words, anytime you receive a certificate or a degree from Blue Ridge, you will receive a graduate survey. The reason why is because not all students return to Blue Ridge after completing a level of credentials such as a certificate. And we care so much about our graduates that we want to ensure we capture you, or we grab you right before you go, so that way we know that you are going to either A, transfer to another institution, B, continue your time at Blue Ridge for another degree, or C, enter into the workforce. And if you're getting ready to enter into the workforce, then I'm very passionate about connecting with you and providing services for you. So once again, my name is Siona, and you will see me, if not my name, again before you graduate. And the reason for me connecting with you today is in regards for the World of Work Inventory, also known as the WOWI. And specifically, this presentation will cover the class debrief for the Education 150 students. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to share my screen with you. I'm going to select what screen that is. And you're going to see me jump between my screen here, which is our presentation, as well as over here for me to pull up the education profile. And so what I'm showing you on my screen right now is the World of Work Inventory ideal profile for a teacher. And we'll get into what that means in just a few minutes. So let's go back to our presentation and let's talk a little bit about the World of Work Inventory. So after this presentation today, hopefully you will understand what I'm talking about when I say the World of Work Inventory, but also having the importance of identifying a vocational goal, the three things that affect your vocational goal or affect job fit, and then also have an opportunity to compare your WOWI results against the education profile that I have created. The education profile is a profile that has been created based on expert advice on what the ideal teacher looks like. And we'll continue to explore that as we go through this presentation. So before we get too far into it, I want to first ask you the question of how do you think career choices are made? Majority of us make career choices based on what we see in the media. And that means that TV and books and movies are going to heavily influence what we think careers look like. A lot of people think that police officers chase crime and are always on I can't talk, that they are always on high-speed chases after criminals or doing fun and exciting things to stop crime. However, if you were to ask a police officer what does he think his job entails, majority of them will tell you paperwork and reports. And so we can look at this screen right here and we can see that Barbie herself has had almost every career option available. And so we can begin to see that career choices are influenced by the things we see in the media. We are influenced by our family, our friends, the careers that our parents have and watching and observing them, as well as people who have made a strong influence in our life. Perhaps a teacher has made a strong influence in your life. So moving right along, let's figure out how do we make a career choice that is of a good person job fit? And what does that term even mean? Well, person job fit is what we consider the best things that are minimally needed in order to make a strong vocational goal. In other words, in order to have a good person job fit, a person must have an interest for the job. They must have the ability or intelligence to do the job, as well as the personality to stay there long term. And so it is the three things that are minimally necessary in order for us to make an informed, strong decision when choosing careers. These three factors are very important, but not equally as important. So the World of Work inventory that we took online, the online assessment that had an ability to observe your aptitude, as well as your career interests, as well as your work style personality, works off of three assumptions. In other words, when it comes to the world of work, just because you're interested in something does not mean you will be good at it. For example, there are a lot of people who want to be doctors, and then once they get into the studies, they realize that they're not good at the content. The world of work also assumes that just because you're good at something does not necessarily mean you'll have an interest in it. For example, a lot of people are good at math, but they don't necessarily enjoy it. And so what we're hoping that when you choose your vocational goal is that you chose something that you're good at, you're interested in, and hopefully you even have the personality to stay there long term. You know, when we talk about making career choices, if we were to go back to this slide, we often ask students, what are you interested in? What classes are you good at or do you excel in? But very often do we ask you, well, do you think that career would fit your personality? And a lot of students will get more than halfway through their program and realize, oh my gosh, this doesn't fit my personality. And so it's really important to begin evaluating aspects of your work style personality before you choose your career. So moving on from our assumptions, we'll talk about why is this important? Why do we even care if you've made a correct vocational goal to be a teacher? Why is that important? Well, it's important that you choose a career that is meaningful and that you'll want to stay in long term because work is important. Work gives life meaning. We get up every day and go to work. The people that we work with are our family away from family. Work helps to define who we are. It also determines how we live. You'll often hear people refer to a work-life balance, indicating that work has a strong presence in creating that work-life balance. And discussing work and the world of work before you get there is also really important because if you choose the wrong career, then it can really drain your life instead of enriching your life. For example, can you think of a person that you know that hates their job so much? Sometimes these people tend to have a negative disposition. Sometimes they're kind of grouchy or mean to other people, and they just tend to seem unhappy. And so work and world of work hopefully is giving your life meaning and not the opposite. And that's one of the reasons why we expose this career assessment to students in Education 150. We're hoping that by learning about the different aspects of the teacher job or a career as a teacher, that you're at least being exposed to it now to make an informed decision. Yes, I still want to be a teacher. Or, this was really good information. Maybe I should think about this and see if it fits my life. And if not, maybe I should contact the Office of Career Services to explore majors that would be a better fit for me based on my career World of Work inventory career assessment results. So you might find that this presentation makes you even more solidified in your decision to become a teacher, or you might find that this information is very enlightening and enriching and has inspired you to explore other things. However, I will say that as we go through this presentation and we compare your WOWI scores to the WOWI scores of an ideal education profile, I never want you to think you wouldn't be a good fit. I just want that information to be there for you as knowledge. So moving right along, hopefully, well, we went too far now. Why do we choose the World of Work inventory? Well, we choose the World of Work inventory because it allows us to assess those 3 factors that are minimally necessary to choose a strong vocational goal: your career interests, your career personality, and your ability to do the job, or your aptitude. And the World of Work inventory is one of the only career assessments that assesses all 3 of those factors. And by doing so, it allows the computer to triangulate your results and spit out a list of potential vocational options for you. So in other words, once you complete the WOWI provides you recommendations for careers outside of maybe what you were exploring. It provides you career options with a 96% confidence rate. So that means that if teacher is not on your list, it doesn't mean that it wasn't a good fit for you. It just might mean that it was at 95 or 94%. And so do not let it discourage you if teacher is not one of your vocational options. The World of Work inventory measures actual abilities and aptitudes and provides those career recommendations, as I mentioned, which is why we like this one. So from the World of Work inventory, we can predict a job fit. But like I said on the last screen, if your results are not 100% ideal, or excuse me, a comparison to the ideal profile for a teacher, do not let that limit you. It's only meant to provide you knowledge to expand your opportunities instead of you thinking, oh my gosh, I won't be a good teacher. For example, if you scored really high in an area that was not related to teaching, that doesn't mean you won't be a good teacher. It just might mean you might teach that subject. And so I know that I continue to harp on this, but it's because I want you to know that the WOWI ideal profile in comparison to your results is meant to expand opportunities and not limit. All right, so let's go ahead and get started here with our CTP, our career training potentials. I don't know why my slide doesn't have a title anymore. Yours is going to look slightly different than mine because of the way that the WOWI has changed. The WOWI now puts colors to the different bars. And so if you have any bars that are teal, what we have learned is that your skills in that area are exceptional or above grade level. If yours were green, then you have basic skills in that area. And if any of yours were that light blue, then those are areas where maybe you need to work a little harder to improve upon. So if we look at the career training potentials, this is where we see that a person has the ability to do the job. For example, if a person has really low scores in this area, but they are wanting to become a doctor, we might say that they might not be the ideal fit until they improve their grades or they improve their scores. Career training potential also gives you an idea of what skills are the most important for teachers as it relates to the job. These skills are neither, or excuse me, the scores to these skills are neither good nor bad. They are only good or bad as they relate to the job you're going for. For example, if a student wanted to be an engineer, but they scored really low in numerical, it would indicate that they are not an ideal candidate to become an engineer until they improve their numerical score. So once again, this is not meant to limit you, it's meant to provide you information to expand and grow. As a teacher, what do you think are the most important career training potentials or aptitude skills for you to have as it relates to your job? If we were to refer to our ideal education profile, we see here If we were to come to this area, which is where our scores are, we see here that the ideal score for a teacher in these different areas, verbal is 42, numerical 31, abstractions 31, mechanical electrical 30, but that's really only important depending on what kind of teacher you'll be, and then an organizing skill of at least 34 as well. So going back to our presentation, we see here that the ability scores for teachers are at least these scores right here, which says that if your score is not at least at these levels, then that might be an area for you to improve upon. As a teacher, there is going to be a strong need for verbal as well as written communication. Even though you might not become a math teacher, there is still an element of math necessary as a teacher. And your organizing skill. Organizing is a very important skill for teachers. However, organizing in this area is different than maybe how you're thinking about organizing. Most organizing, you would assume, my car's organized, my house is really clean, I like to organize my closet. And that is a small example of organizing skill. But really in this context, we mean being able to take a very large amount of information and synthesize it down into a different process. For example, your class syllabus is an example of organization skill. Your teacher took 16 weeks of class, 16 topics, 16 lessons, 16 assignments, 2 exams, a midterm and a final, and they put all that information in a syllabus. So the syllabus is an example of an organizing tool, taking a large amount of information and synthesizing it down into processes and forms. Now, abstractions. What does abstractions mean? Abstractions is your ability to problem solve and critical think. Now you tell me how important you think that is for a teacher. It's pretty gosh darn important. So moving right along here, our ability for scores for teachers, if we were to refer back to our education profile, we see here that there is information regarding that. Please review this profile and please review this area so that way you know what your scores are and what they mean. Moving right along. If you had a lower score on your verbal area, verbal being one of the most important skills for a teacher, then there are remediation tools that you can use to improve your scores. Like I said, this information is not meant to limit or deter you, it's meant to expand your knowledge and improve upon. And so if you scored lower for verbal, knowing that it's one of the #1 skills as a teacher, you might think about taking a public speaking class, taking an English class, looking up unknown words in a dictionary, playing word games like Scrabble, playing crossword puzzles, maybe even just reading magazines and taking note on how they write. And so there's different ways to improve your abilities regardless of what your score may have been. And these remediation techniques are important and valuable for all of the different skills regardless. So we talked a little bit about person-job fit. And so we saw that there are 3 things that are minimally necessary: interests, aptitudes, and personality. We spoke about the abilities first because abilities or the aptitude is the #1 factor to determine best job fit. And the reason why is because if you don't have the ability to do the job, then you can't get it done. And so that's why that's why aptitude is the #1 thing for us to evaluate when talking about your ability to do the job. The very next important thing, I don't know why I still have all of these here, forgive me. The next important thing is your personality. I know that sounds backwards. A lot of people would say, well, first my ability to do the job, and then the second most important thing should be my interest to the job. Well, actually, as humans, we have quite a few bit of interests, but our personality is what is more dynamic and complex. And so we need to evaluate our personality and what works for our personality, and then think about our interests and think about how those interests relate to our personality or not. Because first, the ability to do the job, and then how we relate to the job is how we stay at jobs long term. And that's what brings us to our second graph, or our second table, known as our job satisfaction indicators. So if you ask anybody who is maybe 25 years, 30 years old and older, these people may have had multiple jobs before, or what we would refer to as more career maturity, more experiences within the world of work. And if you were to ask a person who's had career maturity, they will tell you that they choose majority of their jobs later on in life based on personality. Whereas when you're younger and you're in college and you're exploring the world of work and the different interests, you're not thinking about your personality as much because you're thinking about how you relate to work. And you're not thinking about necessarily your personality relating to work, you're thinking about the context of your work. And that's okay, because career maturity is what helps our work style or our job satisfaction indicators develop. When a student comes to me and they have many job satisfaction indicators that are strong preferences, I know that maybe, or that are strong preferences on the negative side, I know that maybe they are still exploring the world of work and still beginning to understand their work style temperament. Once you get a little bit older and you've reached career maturity, depending where you are within your own journey, you might realize that some of these things might become more important to you than others. And some people are so flexible that they can adapt to any situation. But if we were live in class right now, I would tell you to highlight or circle any of the personality types that have a score that touch either this positive dotted line called strong preference or this negative dotted line, strong preference. And after you highlight any satisfaction indicators that touch the positive or negative, we can see the strongest things that are important to you. Now, for the sake of this presentation, I will go through all of the job satisfaction indicators and their meanings. However, if you came to see me for a private one-on-one session, we would talk about the main indicators that relate to you, because these are the things that you either need in a job or the things that will completely deter you from a job. Now, it is important to note that we as human beings can be flexible and adjust to any of these job satisfaction indicators for a particular period of time. However, once we've been at a job long term, there are certain things within our personality that need to be satisfied. Otherwise, we just will not stay there long term. Long term used to be 10 years and above. But nowadays, because of more career mobility within our world of work, 3 years is about long term. And so after a person has been at a job for 2 to 3 years and beyond, they can tell you what aspects of their personality are satisfied, or the job satisfaction indicators that keep them there long term. So once again, you might have 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, or you might have a bunch of these. Maybe you're a picky person, I don't know. But these are different personality aspects of how you relate to the work. So starting right at the top, we see the score of versatile. Versatile is the ability to multitask. Some people like to do anywhere from 1 to 2. Some people like to do anywhere from 5 to 8. And other people like to do anywhere from 8 to 10 and 10 and above tasks at a time. That might mean that you are present at a workspace and there are multiple things going on. For example, let's say you work at a gym. You're the front desk person. You have members coming in. You're hoping that you'll wave to them and say hello and welcome. You have the phone ringing. You have customers and members who are interested in accessing their account or signing up for an account. And so as an employee, you have to juggle multiple things. And so this might make you calm and collect, or this might send you into a frenzy and overwhelmed. It all depends on your work style personality of how many things you'd like to juggle at once. How versatile are you? Another way that versatility manifests in the workplace is that you may find that you like to juggle multiple projects at a time. For example, with my job in the Office of Career Services, at all times I'm planning events. I host 3 open mock interview events that students from an array of different classes can register for. I host the annual career fair, which hosts anywhere from 50 to 75 employers, as well as manage student appointments, faculty appointments, and employer appointments. And so at all times within my job, I have anywhere from 10 to 15 tasks or projects that I can be working on, not to mention the development of workshops such as this. And so my versatility score is going to be way over in this area because I enjoy multitasking and doing many projects at once. If I worked at a job where I was only doing 1 to 2 tasks, I would be unhappy after 3 years or so because my personality desires more versatility within my job. So once again, I can adjust to any of these, but what does my personality crave? Adapt to repetitive work. Adapting to repetitive work does not mean that you would like to stand in one location and pull a lever all day. It does not mean that you want to do the exact same thing all day, every day. However, there is some niceness to knowing what to predict within your job. Let me say that another way. There is comfort in knowing what is going to happen when you get to work. At least there is for me. Some people are okay walking into a place of business and not knowing what's going on and just jumping in and getting in the flow of other things. I, on the other hand, like to adapt to repetitive work. I like to set appointments. I like to establish routines. I don't like sudden chaos within my world because I'm a planner. And so I have a positive score when it comes to adapting to repetitive work. Now, if you are in healthcare or if you are in certain industries, you might not be able to create such a plan and schedule for your work. And so if you are in a job that is very fast paced and always changing, then you might find that adapting to repetitive work is hard, or you might find that it's hard for your personality to adapt to that work style. So adapting to repetitive work is having a degree of predictability about the nature of your job before you get there. And some of us are planners and like that, and other people are first responders and love the thrill and the excitement of never knowing what to expect. So you have to ask yourself, which are you? But as a teacher, my guess is that you like repetitive work because you can plan and you can create lessons and then repeat those on a yearly basis. Moving right along, adapt to specific instructions. Adapting to specific instructions in no way, shape, or form means that you want your boss to tell you what to do and how to do it every time you come to work, but it does mean that you like to receive guidance and lessons in the beginning. I myself have a positive score for adapting to specific instructions. I like to know what my boss is looking for, and I like to receive her specific instructions, and then I take that with my creativity and produce my project or task. But if I don't know what she's looking for, then I don't necessarily know if I'm producing what the mission of our department is for. And so if adapting a specific instructions means that you like to have mentorship or guidance. And people who do not like to adapt to specific instructions is not a good thing or a bad thing. It's only as important as it relates to your job. As a teacher, to some degree, you have no excuse to not adapt to specific instructions. And what I mean by that is your county might give you core components or student learning outcomes, as we call them in higher education. Those are very specific instructions. And then from there, your creativity allows you to devise lesson plans that adhere and provide the assessment of those learning outcomes for those students. So as a teacher, you will still receive specific instructions, but then have the creativity to flow from there. Dominant. Dominant in this case does not have a negative connotation. Sometimes people see dominant and they think, oh my goodness, I'm dominant, I'm sorry. Well, not at all. Dominant in this case is a leadership style, not a managerial style. So if you scored high dominant, that might mean that you within your personality are inspired to want to oversee, manage, and help control different aspects at work. Let's say, for example, that you're in class and your teacher provides you a group assignment. Are you the first person in your group to speak up and provide suggestions? Or are you the person that stays really quiet and kind of listens to everybody else? These are different aspects of dominancy, that your teacher did not make you the leader, but as a leader within yourself, you tend to be more dominant and outspoken. Neither a good thing nor a bad thing, only important as it relates to your job. Dominant is pretty important as it relates to teaching. Gregarious and isolative are two different skills that we have to talk about together. The reason why is because they are the two different sides of the coin when talking about introvert and extrovert. Most people think that you are either or, either an introvert or an extrovert, whereas the WOWI says you actually exist on a spectrum. You might be more friendly sometimes and might be more introverted other times, and that's okay. In this case, gregarious, also known as friendly and outgoing or talkative, is how you like people present in your workspace. For example, if you are high gregarious, it might mean that you like having people present in your workspace. You like having customers come on site, clients or patients, students, and you also like having a team of coworkers. If you are high isolative, it also might mean that you do your best work alone. Now, these two scores are normally interpreted together. For example, I am high gregarious. I like to be in an office setting. I like to have coworkers versus working from home. But I'm also 100% isolative, which means that I do my best work when I'm alone. So I'm friendly and outgoing, but I also really value my own alone time as well. This is really important to know about yourself because it really tells you what type of place that you should go and get a job. Now, if you know that you are overwhelmed with a lot of people in your workspace and your gregarious score is maybe on the lower side or the negative side, that's okay. You'll still be a successful teacher. It doesn't mean that you have to always be talking and be wanting to be the center of attention to be a teacher. In fact, if we were to look at our education ideal profile and we were to go to our gregarious score, you can see here that we do this on a spectrum. Our job satisfaction indicator scores are on a spectrum. So a teacher hopefully has a gregarious score of anywhere from 21 to 56. And the reason why that is important is because you will be in front of a classroom. Now, isolative is not indicated on this chart or on this ideal profile, but I bring it up to you to let you know that if yours is positive, you will still be a wonderful teacher. I am high gregarious and high isolative, which means I'm friendly and outgoing, but I also very much value my alone time. If I had to always be teaching, I would be overwhelmed because that would be too much. I like the balance of both. All right, moving right along. The next score that we have, or the next personality satisfaction indicator that we'll talk about, is our influencing. People who have a strong or high influencing score might be ideal salespeople, politicians, as well as maybe teachers, because hopefully you guys have a strong desire to influence and motivate. However, when we evaluate this on the world of work, we do not state that you have a high influencing score as a teacher, because here influencing means to change the mindset of others, whereas a teacher, you are motivating a change in mindset. You are not controlling a change in mindset, maybe as a salesperson or a politician would. Moving right along, and I do believe that I closed this out, so forgive me and allow me to open it. Moving right along, the next score that we will evaluate is our self-controlled. Self-controlled does not mean that you are out of control. Self-controlled is your ability to deal with pressure, also known as the procrastination scale. People who have a high self-controlled scale manifest in two different ways. Either one, you like a high pressure environment. I always think of an ER nurse who's in the ER taking patients up to surgery, checking in new patients, checking in nurses as they come in for their shift, as well as filling out charts. A lot going on, but sometimes that nurse is right there in her element, calm and collect, even though all this chaos seems to be happening around her. She does well in an environment full of pressure. Also think of a surgeon. A surgeon is doing one task, means he has a low versatile score, but it's a lot of pressure, meaning high self-controlled scale. And he is just completely focused on one task and one task only, and he's okay with that pressure. The other way that the self-controlled scale manifests is maybe you need an element of pressure present to motivate you to do your best work. For example, maybe you start your term paper 2 days before it's due. And the reason why is because you need that element of pressure based on the due date and the deadline to motivate you to do the paper itself. Moving right along, the very next two skills we will talk about are valuative and objective. Valuative and objective are very similar to gregarious and isolative in the sense that we must evaluate them together. Valuative and objective are two ways in which we make decisions. For people who make decisions in a valuative way, they make decisions based off of emotions. It just felt good, which is why I went with that. It was a gut instinct, which is why I went with that. Versus people who make decisions based on figures, facts, and data. These people are more objective in nature. But it tends to be that we make decisions both ways. Sometimes we make decisions first on figures, facts, and data in an objective way, but then we might utilize our valuative feelings and confirm that, or you might be one or the other. Let me give you an example of how these two manifest. So imagine a husband and wife with their realtor walking into a new house. They're evaluating this house to see if it's a house they'd like to buy. The wife walks in and she immediately begins to coo. Oh my God, I love it. It's a Cape Cod, the perfect color, and it's just great. The husband, on the other hand, he is very objective. He is saying, what will my property tax be? When was the roof replaced last? All concerned about figures, facts, and data. He makes decisions in an objective way versus his wife who makes decisions on an evaluative way, which is based on emotions. Neither good nor bad, just important as it relates to teaching. And so if we were to look at the ideal profile, we can see here that making decisions based on emotion is not always ideal as an educator, and rather making decisions based in an objective way is the ideal. For example, in higher education, I work with adults, and very often people will come to me and they will say, I did not complete my assignment based on all of these reasons, even though my heart is right there with them in regards to all of these reasons. I am a teacher, which means that I must evaluate things in an objective way. And so as a result, even though this student might have tugged at my heartstrings and I really want to help them out, I know that I can't allow them to make it up unless they have documentation. So once again, making a decision based on an objective thought process instead of a valuative thought process, which is where a lot of us tend to be. All right, so moving right along, we have the last two. Subjective. Subjective This is confusing sometimes for students because normally subjective and objective go together, or vice versa. Whereas in this case, subjective is completely different than what you would think it is in other ways. Here in the World of Work Inventory career assessment, the word subjective means your need or desire for creative expression. So people who score really high here as teachers might be the people that have the most amazing display boards, or they might be the people who have the most beautiful blackboard setups. I always think of the instructor Sarah Shade when I talk about the subjective score, because if I received a flyer from e-learning and it's absolutely beautiful, I know that it was probably created by Sarah Shade, because as a professional, I can see her self-expression or her subjective personality trait come out even in her beautiful works of art for her blackboard. And so subjective is neither necessary or not necessary as a teacher, but sometimes it might make things more creative and fun in your classroom if you are subjective. And last but not least is our score called rigorous. Rigorous is your attention for detail. And so some teachers are very attentive to detail, and they will be checking every single comma and grammar and punctuation note. And some might just count your paragraphs and make sure there's enough sentences. So your level of attention to detail. As a teacher, hopefully your level of attention to detail is at least a negative 28 to 56. So you have a broad spectrum there. Once again, just like the subjective score or creativity, self-expression, it's really based on you and your preferences, not necessarily indicated by the ideal education profile. Okay, guys, so now we've just spent a really long time on job satisfaction indicators, talking about the ways that we relate to work. You might have heard me say something as I went through this slide and you thought, oh my goodness, I had that when I worked here, or yeah, I know what that's like. I hated it when I was at this job. But now we're going to move on to the content of our work, which is really why we're here, folks. But being the third level predictor, our level of interest, we are going to talk about it last, which is why I saved it for last. And that is our career interest activities. Now, I know that you guys are interested in education because you're in this class, because you're taking Education 150. But there are some other areas that might stand out for you as a teacher. In fact, sometimes I get to this slide with students and they realize, yeah, I did want to be a teacher, but I explored this career interest activity graph or table, and I realized that there was something else I loved more, or that there was something that I wanted to specialize in as a teacher. And so even though you've already chose teaching and education, you might learn a lot about your interests from this particular slide. And so the very first question I'll ask you is, in which one of these categories do you think teaching exists? Which one of these categories is teaching in? And when I say these categories, what I'm really indicating or pointing to are something known as occupational families. The Department of Labor, which is a government agency that oversees labor laws in America, also does a lot of research on careers in America. For example, did you know there are over 44,000 different jobs right now available in America that you could get a job in? So the Department of Labor takes these different occupations and breaks them down into something known as occupational families. These different occupational families have a similar core interest in the way that people relate to the content of this work. For example, public service is an occupational family that has counseling, ministry, education, healthcare, law enforcement, and emergency services. Now, somebody who hears those different industries might say, well, gosh, what does education and healthcare have to do with each other? Well, It's how we relate to the work. So people who get into public service careers tend to want to take care of humanity. That's right. You heard me. You got into the education program because you want to educate humanity. And so all of the different industries in public service have this strong interest to take care of humanity, whether we're doing it through education, healthcare, ministry, counseling, or emergency services. We're taking care of humanity. And so teaching or education exists here in public service. Based on our ideal profile for a teacher, your public service score as well as your other scores can vary. And so we're saying that even though public service is where education is, hopefully you have some interest in that at all. And then the other ones can have a complete wide range from -21 to 56 as well. Now, what a lot of people learn from this slide is maybe what they're going to specialize in as a teacher. For example, I have some students that score really high in the sciences. Now, sciences also includes computer science nowadays as well. And they say, well, I'm going to be a science teacher. Sometimes people score really high in engineer and they say, I'm going to be a math teacher. And so the career interest area can really teach us a lot about the different areas that we might want to teach in. Something really cool that I always like to observe from this page is your strongest influences as you relate to work. Now, how would we see that on this screen? Okay, so no matter what job you have in America or in any other country in this world, maybe not Antarctica, because there's not a lot of people there, but no matter what job you have in this world, your job is comprised of 3 main influences. People, meaning you work with people, you serve people. Your clients are people, your patients are people, your teammates and coworkers are people. Okay, so all jobs comprise of some element of people. They're also influenced by data. Data is the knowledge, figures, facts, and information. You come to school to receive data, technical data as well as other data. So when you're in school and you're learning about education as an industry, you are receiving theories and information and lessons on how to become a teacher. That's the data, okay? And then also the last influence is something called things. We all require something to accomplish our job, whether it's a pencil, a pen, a computer, machinery, tools, maybe even a musical instrument. All of occupations require something that helps us do our job. So some people, for example, if you score if you score maybe high, meaning you touch this dotted line or you are in this gray area for any of these outdoor industrial occupational families, then your strongest influence is going to be things, because you need machinery, tools, and equipment in order to utilize these different jobs or in order to operate in these different jobs. So your strongest influence might be things. However, if you score high in public service, your strongest influence is people, and then data, and then things. The sciences is going to be first data and things, and then people. Because in science, we tend to look at data. We have to know about science in order to process science, and then we're using microscopes and things, and then we might write a report and tell people about it. Engineering related is going to first be data and things, then people. Whereas business relations is going to be people and data, then things. Managerial, once again, will be the same: people, data, things. The arts is going to be things and data, because you're using things to make art, whether it's on the computer, whether it's in person. Art can also be singing, and the thing wouldn't be anything tangible then, but it would be your voice. And so as you can see, every single job or occupational family is influenced by people, data, and things. And so I want you to highlight any occupational family that touches this outer gray edge or this dotted line. And I want you to conclude, is that occupational family have a highest influence in people, in data, or in things? And figure out, what are your top influences as you relate to the interest of work? Is it people? Is it data? Or is it things? And it's going to be a combination of. Most people have two, people and data, or data and things. And so your strongest influences can also infer and teach you what your strongest interest areas are. But since we have chosen education as our major, we will continue moving right along. What else can we learn about the WOWI? Well, if there's no match, that's okay, because they gave you different occupational options for you to explore. And so, like I said, if teacher is on there, that's great. It means that that was a result with a 96% competence rate. However, if teacher is not on your different occupation options, do not fret. It might have been at a 94 or 93 or even less percentage of best fit, which means it's still a high percentage of best fit. And from there, from your interpretive report, which is what the WOWI will provide you once you complete the assessment, you can click on those different options and read about them online. Maybe you want to read about the different types of the different types of teachers. You can also explore that. Maybe teacher was not your top suggestion and you want to explore the other suggestions that the World of Work inventory has provided you. Those are different options available to you based on your results. You can also explore additional information from these profiles. When you go and click these profiles, it's going to bring you to ONET Online, which is the Department of Labor's online occupational handbook for careers. And you can even tell on this different profile how much money you can make for your career and the different areas where you can make that money. And so you could actually come in here and you can type in your zip code for Martinsburg, for Hagerstown, for Winchester, and then you can evaluate, where would I get paid the most if money is of interest to you. You can also learn the growth expectancy of different occupations and careers from this online profile. Now, as a teacher, the teaching occupation is always needed, necessary, and growing. And so there are different things that you can do with the World of Work inventory and the different results which you receive. More than anything, this presentation is meant to teach you about your future career as a teacher. And so we encourage you to continue learning about jobs. Continue learning and exploring about education, as well as anything else that you may have been interested in. Go online and read in the Department of Labor's occupational handbook the different profile as exampled in the last slides that I just showed you. Go and interview people. Interview faculty members at Blue Ridge, people working in the field. Ask them questions about what they like about their job. What's the worst thing they've seen since being in the industry? What's the hardest part? What do they dislike? What do they love? Find out how people in your field feel about their industry. And then ask for an opportunity to job shadow. Now, I know the education program at Blue Ridge is wonderful in the sense that it gives you an opportunity to job shadow, but take it a step further. Maybe ask somebody who's outside of your program for an opportunity to learn more and to job shadow them as well. And create a vocational goal. Kind of have an idea of the salary that you would like to make when you do graduate and where you'd like to live and the availability of jobs there. Now, you know that as an educator, you will go on to get your master's degree, but choosing the time and the cost to complete the remainder of your degree is something right now that you can do, which will go into your vocational plan to reach your vocational goal. And as always, you can contact the Office of Career Services, because we are always available to you and always available to provide you additional assistance and additional WOWI debrief for this World of Work Inventory career assessment that we spoke about today. So if you're interested, you can reach out to the Office of Career Services at any time, and I can have an appointment with you and talk about your results, or even help you come up with your vocational plan. So once again, my name is Siona Escoto, and I am the Outreach and Placement Specialist from the Office of Career Services, and it has been my privilege to connect with you. Thank you so much.